Alrighty, friends, we're back. Your favorite podcast show of the week. It's Location Weekly. It's episode number 608. And as you can see, I am not in Germany anymore. I'm back in North America, in Toronto. And Brianna's back with us. Thank you, Karsten, for helping out and filling in last week. And it was great to spend the week at Retail Loco in Munich. It was an awesome event. So I'll talk more about that in a second. But Brianna, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you, Karsten, for covering for me. Missed you guys last week. I was in Idaho out at the Coachella Summit, which was awesome. And now I'm clearly still not back in New York, but I am in South Carolina. So just like kind of jumping all over the place, spending some time with my side of the family and celebrating a birthday for the weekend. So I am good. I'm tired, but I'm good. And like my mind is like refreshed with new ideas, and my soul's refreshed with family, so that's good. So tell
Awesome.
us about your trip. How are things? How are you?
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was we did our Retail Loco back in Atlanta in October, and that was our kind of first in-person event since COVID. And that was like a good start, and we had a good crowd there. But this seemed to like really sort of build on the momentum of that. And we had people come from across Europe, obviously a lot from Germany, but and the venue, like I think it was like, I'm gonna say it's the best venue we've ever had for a Retail Loco. So it was in the Munich airport itself. Like they have this sort of like on the edge of the airport, this sort of training center, event facility that they use for like their own internal like training mostly. And it was just like, and it's just wired up, like, streaming and everything. So it was awesome. And then, a little personal highlight with Ground Level, we were a sponsor there. And so we had, some stuff there, but they had this like war room there with like, all these screens like curved on a wall. And so we took over the entire war room with Ground Level, dashboard stuff. And it was just a cool thing, like for me to kind of see that, like, in a room like that. But it was amazing and great speakers, from some interesting brands. And, we covered a lot of topics and from the metaverse to, indoor tech, indoor location tech to, mobile wallet applications and things like that. So it was really fascinating, I would say. And I will also say that I think for me anyways, because both Carson and I had been to NRF and we'd seen you while we were there in New York. And I felt NRF was like I didn't get a lot out of it this year. Like there was a lot of people and it was back from that point of view, but I felt like everything was, from kind of 2.5 years old, that they didn't have a chance to talk about before COVID kind of thing. And now they had a sort of platform for us. It wasn't really innovative, but I felt at our conference this week, it was very, a lot of stuff that I wasn't aware of that people were doing, and especially some of the mobile wallet applications that people are pushing now as a sort of an alternative way to reach people, versus sort of traditional couponing or messaging or things like that. So very neat.
Very good. Well, on that mobile wallet and payment space, maybe I can like jump into the first story.
Let's
We've
do
got
it.
4 great stories, right? And this first one is with Toast, and they have integrated now with Google. So they've integrated, well, specifically with Order with Google. So into that platform. So now restaurants can really unlock this new channel for their orders, which I think is actually really cool. So Toast restaurants that use Google search and maps, it's like this efficient ordering channel marketing engine for them. So I think this is really cool. So if you're an Order with Google user, like customers can search for the food that they want, connect with the local restaurant, and pay for their orders ahead of time, or at pickup. So if it's like independent table service restaurants, I was reading this stat is very interesting, but independent table service restaurants, only 13% are powered by digital channels. So I think there's a huge opportunity there. I know some of the local restaurants that we visit up in New York use Toast like for ordering. So I love that this is available now, like through Google. Obviously, I can just go directly through the Toast because I know that restaurant. But if I was looking for something new or searching, I might be using Google. And so this, I think, a great way for that, both like connecting that discovery phase of like, what do I want to eat? What do I want to order? And just streamlining it into the order platform. So I think this is, a simple story, but I do think that it's impactful, especially for those smaller restaurants and independent restaurants that, are trying to get like discovered and put, fill more seats really and more orders. So what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I agree. It's simple but effective and like a powerful way for sort of discovery and a simple integration on the payment side. So I like it from that point of view. And Toast is one of those companies that's kind of been on a tear lately. So since this story came out, just 2 weeks ago, then last week I read that they just also acquired Delphi digital signage system. So Delphi does a lot of the sort of drive-through, the digital screens, menus that you see in drive-throughs, and so that's interesting too, because if you think about it, sort of you've got this integrated ordering with through Google. You've got sort of potentially people discovering while they're driving on the road, and then pulling up to these screens, and it's all integrated together. So I think there's a lot here in terms of the ecosystem that Toast is building. Obviously they have a lot of other platforms too, that in terms of their payment platforms and other things that they do at point of sale. But yeah, I like it. I think it's great. And you're going to see, I think, more and more of these sort of connectivity pieces plugged together between online ordering systems or search engines, and point of sale systems. So there's a lot going on, I think, around this, but I like it. This is a good, simple integration for me.
There you go.
Okay, on to our second story. So now we're going to shift over and talk about Coca-Cola a little bit. And what I like about this story is that it seems Coke has really started to shift kind of their marketing focus a little bit to be more local. And so they've been testing a bunch of different campaigns, consumer facing campaigns, in different markets all over the world that are all about sort of engaging directly with the consumer. And I think before I kind of highlight some of the pieces here, I think that one of the things for me that has been a big shift in general in CPG, is this sort of move away from sort of a B2B approach, or relying on the retailer or the restaurant chain or whoever to sort of be your interface to the consumer, and kind of this going direct to the consumer itself. And so a couple of things that they've been doing in terms of different pilots that they've been running that I think are interesting. So in Vietnam, they partnered with 700 food restaurants, and they use social and digital content to create like all these combo deals. And then through like sort of on the ground campaigning and engagement with these shops, they saw a 20% uplift in those merchants, and over 1 million transactions in these sort of combo deals with their Coke products. In India, they went after cricket fans using AI and first party data, so you could scan a QR code on a product label, and then that would sort of bring you to sort of specialized content from the Cricket World Cup that was recorded through a camera that was installed on the wicket at the cup, and then you could receive personalized content based on your favorite matches and things like that. And I can go on and on. There's like several more where they're like blending, like in Latin America at the Rock in Rio festival, they blended content there through live streams, and then tying that to Fortnite video games, so bring the metaverse elements into this and things like that. So what I like about all of this stuff is they're really going local. They're really going, engaging directly with communities and going after, sort of these niche markets, whether it be music festivals or, restaurant engagement or, sports. They're trying a bunch of different experiments and piloting a lot of different things here. So I like that. Any thoughts from you?
Yeah, well, I think 20% is a number you can't argue with. That's like a great stat. And I do think that creating like this hyper local presence is a great approach to it. I was looking at the growth of larger companies over time, and it's interesting because you look at how Coca-Cola was always like one of the biggest companies and still is to this day, but their growth, has, I would say, like kind of plateaued a bit where year over year earnings is like just a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. It's not drastically incremental like we've seen some of the tech giants do, right? But I think that this approach is like really unique, and it gives them an opportunity to maybe scale that in a different way. So I like the idea of pairing things, and I think that sometimes, like from the way that our mind works as humans, it's like, okay, I see a picture of a deal or I see a Coca-Cola and I automatically want that with that meal. So it kind of helps you picture yourself having that whole entire experience, drink included. And so I think that that's probably, a great approach there. So not too much to add, but it's exciting. So sticking with kind of like the payment side of things, my second story this week is about the buy now, pay later space. And we've seen, I've seen like this really explode, I would say, over the past couple of years with like Klarna and some other companies that are offering this. But specifically, this company, Splitit, is kind of focusing on the physical retail space, which is really interesting because traditionally, I think it's been more of an e-commerce play. So Splitit is a white label buy now, pay later provider. So they just had this partnership that they launched with the point of sale terminal. I don't know if you pronounce it Ingenico or Ingenico, but that like red logo with Ingenico and Henico written in it that you see when you check out at so many merchants and physical places. Well, now they have this ability where it's up to the retailer if they want to integrate this buy now, pay later option for their customers. And I think this is actually pretty genius. So now the customer can like pay later, like have maybe pay half up front, half later on the, in a month or something. And so they have about 40 million point of sale terminals globally with Ingenico across 300,000 merchants, which is a huge base, right, to start with. And it's going to be added via their cloud-based system. So the buy now, pay later space is projected to make about 5% of global e-commerce transactions by 2025. But what they weren't accounting for is the fact that nearly 85% of transactions are like physical retail transactions, right? And so like tapping into that 85%, I think is amazing and huge. So it's such a great opportunity and smart thing to go after. So we've seen like Affirm, Klarna, they've released these debit cards that allow payments to be split up with no interest. Square's Afterpay allows the customers to use like the buy now, pay later at participating retailers. It's also a built-in option to the Square point of sale system. But I think they're likely to succeed. They're suggesting that it's going to be more in these like high ticket items. So like furniture, luxury apparel, think of like, I'm going to go buy, a Louis Vuitton bag or a Chanel bag. Maybe I want to like break this up. So they are looking at tickets between $500 and $5,000 roughly. And so the user's not paying a fee or interest with Splitit. So it's earning revenue by charging the merchant to use this like subscription-based service. And so on the retailer side, which I think is extremely smart. So for me, thinking about like the current economic, trends and considerations that we're facing here, we're being a little bit more careful and hesitant with how much we spend on things that are not necessities. So I think that like this is like reaching probably like three key areas for me on why this is such a great business plan. Is like, one, it's an untapped market considering it's physical retail versus the e-commerce play. Two, the economic considerations that people have this frame of mind. And three, I just think that like being able to not have that consumer pay for it and putting it on the retailer, because the retailer is in essence maybe getting business that they wouldn't otherwise, because it's a consideration that like, hey, I can pay for half of this now, half of this later. And traditionally in retail, that was not the case. So I like this business idea, like not from a personal financial standpoint, but I think that this is going to be very profitable.
Yeah, completely agree with that. I think obviously, the whole buy now, pay later movement is growing, by leaps and bounds, and traditionally comes from that sort of e-commerce side that you said at the beginning. But I see a play for this in physical retail, especially with where the economy is right now, and potentially going into a recession, and everybody's sort of wallets tightened up a little bit right now, right? So if there are those sort of bigger purchases in particular that you still want to do, this is a sort of an interesting mechanism to facilitate that, I think. And I think one of the things that I was reading in this story that intrigues me is, like, for those who don't have credit cards, where you might kind of make that bigger purchase and then spread out the payments, from a credit card point of view over time, this is an interesting alternative. And yeah, it's one of the stats that they share here, that from a PayPal survey last year, said 79% of millennial and Gen Z buy now, pay later users were more likely to make repeat purchases at a merchant that offered that service. So I think it's an interesting way to kind of sort of bring in a new customer base, a new generation that where maybe disposable income is limited, and give them that ability to do something different. And I think like, they're not, obviously Splitit is kind of pushing this forward, and I think this is a great partnership, and a huge win in terms of how they're going about this, and integrating this into the POS side of things. But Klarna and some of the others that you mentioned are also kind of pushing into this space too. So I think we're going to see a lot of movement around this. But it's hard to argue with 40 million point of sale terminals that Ingenico has out in the market at 300,000 merchants, right?
Right.
It's yeah, and I guess the other thing too for me is I wonder what sort of data will be available to third parties potentially from this, in terms of are they looking to also license data out from this, the way MasterCard or others do. So could be interesting.
Yeah, one to watch for sure.
Yeah. All right, on to our final story. So this is an interesting one, and I kind of, it's not a sort of normal technology story that we cover on here, but this designer named Oni Yan has created a new device called In Memorium. And it's a device that lets neighbors know when someone in your neighborhood has died alone in their home. So this designer has built this sort of this prototype device, and it's kind of a two-part system. So it has a battery-powered odor detector that would be similar to a carbon monoxide kind of detector that we have in our homes. And then outside, a signal lamp that's connected through a wireless connection, that lets passersby in the neighborhood know that somebody in that household has passed away. So it's very very easy and simple. So you just kind of mount this odor detector to your wall, and then it reacts to the sulfur compounds that are released when a human body starts to decay after death. So again, picking up kind of just like a carbon monoxide detector would. But then when it detects that, it basically, instead of like an alarm being sent out, it then basically kind of signals this lamp outside, and then the lamp kind of sort of moves, and then sort of kind of like a little bit of like a tiny little lighthouse kind of shines this light out into the neighborhood, and then people know that that has happened, and to go and kind of care for their neighbors. And it's kind of, I like it because like sort of the whole motivation behind it is this person had experienced something in their life like this, and then started researching it, and then found out that this happens more often than you might think, that people are just dying alone, and maybe choosing to stay in their homes long a long time, and then no family members are close by or around, or aware of that, and it happens, right? So kind of tapping into your neighbors and kind of each other and the humanness that we are, I think is an interesting use of this technology. and kind of bringing people together in a way too. And then the other thing is that the name In Memoriam, translates to remember someone. That's what In Memoriam is. And so the designer says that when the signal lamp is lit, the light not only serves as a signal for the house's community, but also to symbolically remember the deceased person. So I like the whole sort of notion of kind of what they've done here and the simplicity of the technology, and it's serving a real sort of need in a community. Thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the story of how this came to be is something that like you definitely feel and it can resonate, with all of us. Especially I would say the majority of people have a loved one or someone who lives alone that may not be, checked in on very regularly. And so I think this is solving for that. A lot of times we're trying to like go into the preventative space, like how can we help stop death, right? But I think that this is obviously something that is one, like from just a community standpoint, as you mentioned, and bringing people together and giving that awareness as is I think a very like valuable and personal connecting thing, right, for your community.
Yeah.
Now what I do think is that I could see this being integrated into something like a Nest, or something where it's like just brought in with and like rolled out at massive scale as a feature within existing platforms. So very interesting and heartfelt. So
Yeah, for sure. So that's our show for this week. Four wide-ranging stories there. Some interesting integrations and partnerships. And thank you everybody for listening and watching. You've been listening to episode 608 of Location Weekly. Of course, we'll be back next week with another show. And if you have story ideas that we should be covering, reach out to us, please. If you have a case study that you'd like to share, we also have our Best Retail Cases platform. Just go to bestretailcases.com and submit your case study there. We'll see you next week. Have a great week, everybody. Bye.
bye.